So there are a couple of things you should be aware of that are happening that you might not know about. And they're going to have long-term effects for the world and for the United States. And one of them is the destruction of Europe. Now, why should we care about Europe? Well, in the United States, most of our ancestors came from Europe. And so there's that sentimental attachment, that cultural attachment, that religious attachment. That's the Christian West that we sometimes talk about. Christian West, what is that? Well, it's like Istanbul in this direction. That's the Christian West. And Europe is the bulk of it. But maybe as important, certainly geostrategically as important, if China rises and takes the East, what do we have here in the West? Well, we have Europe and we have the Americas. And that's our world. That's what we influence. Those are our actual allies because they live close to us. Much as you might like the Philippines, in 30 years, will the United States have a lot of influence in the Philippines? Probably not. Anything in the South China Sea is going to belong to China. Whether you want that or not is totally irrelevant. So what happens to Europe really, really matters to us here in the United States. And despite having a lot of silly leaders, we basically are aligned on the level of values. I mean, they're like liberal and annoying and eat cheese and all that stuff. But ultimately, if you're looking around the world and trying to figure out who are my real allies, who are my baseline allies, would be the Europeans. Well, one of the things you notice if you pay any attention to this at all is that the main victim of this war after the 6 Gulf states is Europe. Because it's their energy that's being destroyed both by Iran and probably also by Israel, despite a lot of lying about it. It's their energy. And by the way, if you're paying any attention at all, you may have noticed that just the other day, the Ukrainians, really a proxy for, if there was ever a proxy for the American deep state, it's the Ukrainian government, just went and hit a Russian energy installation. Really? So who's the victim of that? Europe. Now, why would Europe be the victim? Too little has been written, and very little even is noticed about this, but the hostility that Israeli government leaders feel toward Europe whenever they speak about it is very, very obvious. So here's the former leader of Israel, Naftali Bennett, talking just the other day, maybe I think yesterday, about Europe. Watch this.
Had we not acted, all of Europe would be under a terrible nuclear ballistic missile menace. So we're fighting your war. And we expect not to be, criticized in and on, but we expect your backing. That would be the decent thing to do. I think any European leader who sort of says, this isn't our problem. So when will it become your problem? When they have a nuclear weapon? When the missile is on its way to Madrid? When it hits Madrid or Barcelona? Is that when you're going to wake up? So we're doing the fighting. We didn't ask you for any help, nothing. All we're doing is fighting against this horrible radical Islamist menace. We're reducing and hopefully eliminating this threat. And instead of thanking us, you're criticizing us.
We're the victims. Why haven't you thanked us enough, Europe? We pushed the United States, which has bases in all your countries, a fellow NATO member of the United States, we pushed the United States into a war that shafts you completely to end a threat that was not actually a threat to you. And in so doing, we constricted your energy supply to the extent that you're going to have a depression in Europe. And by the way, in case that's not enough, we're going to give you a migrant crisis. We're going to give you a migrant crisis because Iran is pretty far from Milwaukee, but not that far from Paris. And the aftermath of every Israeli-inspired war over the past 30 years has been to send desperate migrants into Europe. So if you're one of those people who consumes dumb stuff on the internet, it's like, how did this happen? London's becoming Muslim. Well, it happens because the Brits hate themselves, of course, and masochistically want to import people who don't share their values. But it also happens because we have wars in the Middle East that have downstream consequences. And this war, the biggest country in the region, watching its infrastructure get destroyed, will inspire mass migration. And ultimately, a lot of those people are winding up in Europe. But Naftali Bennett is saying to Europe, you haven't thanked us for that. So what you have here is the never-ending battle, the real battle, which is over the moral high ground. That's the real battle. Who occupies the moral high ground? And high ground is a real thing. If you're in the high ground, you aim down at people. You've got a clear field of fire. You're in charge. And if you control the moral terms, if the conversation begins with, hey, you've wronged me, I'm the victim, there's really no way to win that fight. And that's what Naftali Bennett was just doing. And that's what Benjamin Netanyahu does in every sentence. Hey, no one suffered like Israel has suffered. Therefore, shut up and do what we want and don't complain about it. In fact, thank us for it. So you should know that Europe is in very serious trouble because of this, and that matters to Americans. But the concerns that we're going to have to deal with, we pray not, here in the United States are not limited to the slow death of our true allies. They would include attacks here. Both acts of terror that are pretty predictable. When you kill religious leaders in foreign countries, it does tend to inspire extremism. It's not an excuse for it. It's horrifying. But that's why you don't want to do anything to encourage religious extremism, particularly if you pretend you don't like it. Maybe don't kill ayatollahs and you'll get less of it, obviously. But that's not just it. The United States has never engaged in a policy openly of targeting other heads of state because countries don't do that. Why don't they do that? Because it's not a precedent they want to set. It's one of several precedents that countries hesitate before setting in warfare. Don't assassinate the head of state because we don't want our head of state to be assassinated. Don't openly target civilian infrastructure, of course. And if you can help it, don't call for absolute, total, abject surrender. Because that's a lot to ask of any nation. And it tends to inspire people to fight to the bitter end when you start talking like that. And when you start talking like that, you are opening yourself up. And maybe most of all, don't say out loud that we're replacing a government in order to control it and steal its resources. Now, why wouldn't you do that? Two reasons. One is a kind of abstract moral reason, because it's wrong. That's why theft is illegal in every country in the world. You can't just say, I want that, I'm going to shoot you. We have laws against that. And those laws are rooted in the understanding that you're not allowed to just take something because you want it by force. We think that's immoral. That's the basis of our legal system and of our religion and of most religions, by the way. So there's that. But the other reason is because you don't want it done to you. And it might be a good time just to remind ourselves that the United States has a lot of resources. In fact, by some measures, it's the most resource-dense nation in the world. And it's also, by, say, Nigerian standards, pretty lightly populated. 350 million people spread out across a continent, the prettiest continent on the planet, with abundant everything. Now, we don't extract a lot of it because we decided we're just too rich to mine things, but it's still here. We also have the largest freshwater reserves of any country in the world. Maybe after Russia, but certainly close. Massive amounts of fresh water. Most fertile farmland in the world. Abundant oil and gas. So we have resources too. And so if you set up a precedent, because we make the rules, because we have been the beneficiary of this unipolar system, we're in charge of the world, and the new rule is, if you've got a lot of resources and we want them and we can just overthrow your government and kill the people who run it and take them for ourselves, is that the standard? Apparently. Then at some point it's at least conceivable that we would have to suffer that standard. And you just pray that that never happens, but it's worth thinking past like next Wednesday and acknowledging that it could. And if we're blowing up other people's civilian infrastructure, which we have done for a while now, since we blew up Nord Stream, because we don't like Putin because he's bad. He's just bad. But that was the vital energy artery into Europe, our supposed allies, and we just blew it up. Proving simultaneously that we didn't care about global warming, of course, because that was the largest man-made emission of CO2 in history, but that we're disregarding our own rules. Okay, so we have to live by the new standard. It's a very long way of saying there could be consequences to this. Consequences, you don't have to be some sort of liberal who loves the UN or whatever, is pro-French. Stop. If you care about the United States, you should be worried. The thing that you should be paying attention to is the change in American authority and the level of power our authorities domestically here in the U.S. feel like they can assume, because that always expands during war. Wartime leaders become authoritarian, every single one of them. And authorities below the executive also become authoritarian. Did you know that in 1942, when Franklin Roosevelt issued his famous executive order to intern about 120,000 Japanese Americans, mostly in the West, Oregon, Washington, California, in concentration camps, did you know the most interesting fact of that decision is often omitted from it? The overwhelming majority of them were American citizens, actual citizens or legal residents, but 2/3 were American citizens with full citizenship who'd been convicted of no crime, hadn't even been charged with a crime, but they were thrown into concentration camps for 3 years and lost their property. And there was some effort in the 80s to be like, oh, we're so sorry. And also, who really cares? Imperial Japan was bad, but these people weren't actually subjects of Imperial Japan. They were American citizens. And they were thrown into concentration camps with their families and no one really said anything? I mean, it's complicated. It's complicated. That's not complicated, actually. That's totally wrong. You can't treat American citizens that way if you're the U.S. government, ever. And yet, Roosevelt was able to do it because it was 1942 and the war wasn't looking good. And that's the other thing to remember, that as wars get tougher, say if you commit ground troops and find yourself stuck in a place and can't get out, it's happened many, many times. As things get tougher and leaders become less popular and people become more enraged and discouraged and sad and distracted, governments can assume powers unimaginable in peacetime, even more dramatically than they did during the COVID epidemic. That can happen. And it may be starting to happen. Speaking for myself, I've been threatened with more FBI investigations in the last month than during the entire Biden administration. So maybe that's an indicator of something. 2 more than during the entire Biden administration, which I criticized every single day for its duration. So there's that. But here's one pretty specific example, a piece of tape that should tell you what to be on guard against. And that's at the local level, not at the level of federal law enforcement, but like your local sheriff, assuming powers that no man short of God possesses, and certainly no one in the United States possesses. In flat, obvious contradiction to our founding documents, to the Bill of Rights, this Sheriff Bouchard from Michigan, has decided that he's going to arrest and imprison people who make memes mocking him. This is real from last Friday. Watch this.
I give you this by way of example. Some pond scum felt empowered and emboldened enough to put this picture of me up to try to threaten and intimidate me, which of course he didn't do because I signed up for this. And by the way, the person that did this said a bunch of terrible things, not just against me, but against a lot of groups and individuals, who, by the way, was arrested today in Wisconsin. My point is this, though. If this person is emboldened and empowered enough or feels safe enough to do this for me, what does he do to a kid? What does he do to a Jewish family walking down the street?
Well, he didn't do anything. He made an ugly meme. But the sheriff's not intimidated. I signed up for this. I knew the risks of the job when I became your sheriff. This guy's like some former Republican politician in the state of Michigan. I knew the risks. I signed up for this. Someone made a funny meme about you or an ugly meme about you. It's a meme. It's an image on the internet that was on Instagram, not on the battlefield. You faced no physical risk. You just admitted that. And you had the guy arrested in another state and he's in jail? How is this not leading to mass protests? Why did they not shut your sheriff's department down? Where's the Department of Justice? Where's the Civil Rights Division? Are you allowed to just arrest people who make fun of you? Oh, it's so ugly. It's anti-Semitism. Okay, well, it's racism. You're mocking the vaccine. It's all the same. These are all pretexts that we take literally because we're dumb. And no one wants to be an anti-Semite or a racist or deny science, whatever they tell you your crime is. The actual crime is always the same. It's mocking and impeding the authoritarian impulses of the people in charge. It's making fun of the sheriff, which is exactly what this criminal did. But the sheriff's okay tonight. He's going to be all right. He signed up for this. The rest of us did not sign up for this. This is illegal under the First Amendment to the United States Constitution. It's also totally incompatible with what it is to live in this country. You get to say what you think. There is no legal category of hate speech. There's only speech the people in charge hate. So this guy should be the subject of a federal investigation like in about 1 minute after that hits the internet. Don't think he has been. Let's hope he will be. But that's exactly the kind of change that can bubble up in your country during war. And it's like some kooky sheriff Republican. That's the Republican? That's the free speech party guy? Really? And it's in Michigan, and who even knows, some county in Michigan. And all of a sudden you wake up and you get arrested for a meme because it's hate speech, which means it's speech the people in charge hate. And then if this goes on long enough, or if the United States are to really suffer, it gets more extreme. There are already neocons saying if there's a terror attack in the United States as blowback from the war that they pushed for, that they will make certain that people who oppose the war are arrested for the terror attack. Follow the logic chain. Oh, you can't because there isn't one. They're openly saying we will use the deaths of Americans to settle our political scores using your government law enforcement. Not so different from we will settle our ancient tribal disputes on another continent using your military. Kind of the same principle. But it's not acceptable here. If the Iran war was bad, allowing the U.S. government to arrest, persecute, investigate, spy on U.S. citizens for exercising their God-given rights is worse. And you'll know it's bad when they start talking about a draft. Now, what is a draft? Well, of course, it's the definition of tyranny. It is somehow the right of a government to take the fruit of its population, its young, fit citizens, the ones who are supposed to build the civilization, continue the country, take them and force them to risk their lives, and in some cases die, for a decision they didn't make, and in this case, they don't support at all. What percentage of 18-year-old American men support the war in Iran? Haven't seen the polling. Imagine it's quite a bit below 30%. Maybe even lower than that. And by the time we get to a draft, you can be assured it'll be even lower than that. So that would be tyranny. If there's another definition of tyranny, forcing people to die for a war for another country when your country is not even conceivably in peril of like invasion, except the long-term kind created by immigration, but an imminent invasion of foreign troops. But, we went into this war because Benjamin Netanyahu wanted us to, and it's not going well, and you need to fight that war at the risk of your life, even though you hate it and have never really understood what it's about because everyone lied to you about it. And if you don't do that, we'll arrest you and put you in jail. I think that's the definition of tyranny. And simply because it's happened in the past doesn't make it any less tyrannical.